This conference will now be recorded.
We're in Kriyat Shema, book 4, chapter 4, number 2. What we also need in order to understand who Kiaboris Baruch Shemo Hinehu Melech Al Kol Briotav. God is the king over all of his creations. What does that mean? Upeirush inyan zehu. The explanation of this is as follows: Ki amnam amitat mitziyuto yibarach hu davar bilti nitle bezulato klal. This we discussed in the very, very first chapter, that God's existence does not depend, it's not nitle, it's not hanging, it doesn't depend bezulato on anyone else besides him, klal. Uvilti mityaches lezulato. Right? And it can't be compared. There's no yachas, there's no comparison, there's no connection to anything else. We can't look at something else and say, oh, that will give us an idea about Hashem's existence. Kinehu matsui muchrach. That with matsui muchrach, again, in the very first chapter, he discussed this, meaning his existence is essential. It is an inherent existence. Everything else is existing because of their connection, because of God's will for us to exist. Hashem is matsui muchrach, vishalem, shalem, complete, full, perfect, mitzad atzmo, in and of himself, right? Once something is dependent on something else, it's not shalem, it's not complete in and of itself. It has that dependency on something else. Hashem is shalem mitzad atzmo, ve'ein lo shum yichus imacher klal, and he has no connection, no relationship with anything else at all. Lo lamala mimenu, not anything that is, so to speak, above him. Below lamata mimenu, nor anything that is beneath him. Perish. She'ein lo siba sheyitaleh va klal. There is no siba, no reason, no cause that God is dependent upon. Lo chimisovav im sibato, velo kimitzdaref im mitzdarfo. Not that he connects with anything equal to him or with anything that is beneath him. Meaning, even though we do speak about the Hashem drawing close to the world based on our actions, or Hashem having that kisui panim, that hester panim, that hiding of his face because of our actions, he's not dependent upon us, meaning that those are, so to speak, parameters, rules that he made, that he keeps to those rules as long as he wants to keep to those rules, but he's not bound by any of that. And as we say, that ultimately when it's the time for that gilui hayichud, for God to reveal his true essence, his true unity, at that point, regardless of where we as a people, as humanity, or as the Jewish people are at, that will happen. V'nei b'bechina zot nikra'eu b'shem Elokim Baruch Hu. And it is this aspect, it is when speaking or referring to this aspect that he is called Elokim, which means, right, the Shulchan Aruch tells us, the Code of Jewish Law tells us, that when we're saying in our tefillot, in our davening, in our prayers, when we say Elokim or Elokeinu, what we think about is Takif Bal HaYicholet, the all-powerful one. Dahainu Matsui HaMuchrach Mitzad Atzmo. This is this inherently necessary creature, being, I should say, Mitzad Atzmo, Kolosh Zacharnu, as we have mentioned. And this Elokim is very important because it's often brought up. Elokim is in the plural. So how could God be Elokim when we have so much emphasis on Hashem Echad, on God being one? But Elokim means power. And therefore he is Elokim. He is all of the powers. All the powers that exist are actually him. That also explains that we call idolatry Elohim Achirim. We're not calling them gods when we call them Elohim. We're calling them acherim, other powers. And they are, if those who worship the sun is a power, but they are Elohim acherim. They draw their power from the Creator. It's sort of like, I like to explain it, like you have an outlet on the wall. The electricity flows out, but that is just a conduit through which the power flows. There's a generator which generates that power, that electricity. And that's what we say, even though we have Elohim Acherim, we say Hashem Elokechem Emet. God is the true Elokim. He is the true power, meaning the true power source. That is why also judges are referred to as Elohim, because they have the power to put in play, to put into action the different laws of the Torah. So they too serve as powers, but Hashem is Elokim Emet. V'amnam, biyot sheratza uvara nivraim, being that God wanted and created creations, the kulam tluyim bo, and all that which is created is dependent, is hinging on God. B'mitziutam, in their very existence. U'b'chol b'chinotam, and in all aspects that they contain, as we've mentioned, Moshe Zacharnu, nikra'eu b'b'china zo adon kol. That is how we get this idea of God being the Adon. And the Shem Hashem, Baruch Atah Aleph Daled Nun Yud, right? When we say that comes from the root of Adon, that God is the master of all. Ki hakol mimenu, everything only exists as it draws its power, its sustenance, its existence from Him. V'hakol shelo, everything belongs to Him. V'hu shalit bakol, and He is the one who rules over everything. Kiritzono, according to His will, according to the way He sees fit. So that's Elokim, and that is the Adon call. V'ulam, Od ratza b'tuvo v'chasdo, God also wanted, based upon His tov, His goodness, v'chasdo, and His kindness, lahashpil kaviyachol, ba'an vato, et rum kavodo, to lower down, to bring down, so to speak, through His humility, His incredible honor, to bring that down, to allow us liot mityaches el nivra'av, in order to have this yachas, this connection, this association, this relationship with nivra'av, with those which He created. Afal pi shebe'emet, even though in truth, ein lahem yachas imo klal, we can have no connection. We are such eons beyond Hashem. Now, this is used to explain. We say that Moshe was the Anav. Moshe was the Anav Mikol Adam. He was the most humble of all people. So, a question is sometimes asked: how can Moshe have been the most humble of all people? He knows he's the number one human being on the planet. That when it came time to take us out of Egypt, even though Aaron had been his brother Aaron had been the leader until that point, Moshe was the one to do it. And even though Joshua also ascended Mount Sinai to a certain height, only Moshe went up all the way. So Moshe is the one. He is the number one human being. And he is the one who is closest to God more than anyone else ever was, ever will be. We say, Lo Yakum, there will never arise another prophet like Moshe. So how could he be so humble? How could he be have the greatest humility of all people? But actually the question is the answer. Because he was the closest to God, so then he understood what a human being is in relation to God. So he was the most incredible. human being, right? It's like saying, he is the most incredible 60-year-old rabbi basketball player, right? Okay, right? But very good, right? How good are 60-year-old rabbis at basketball, right? So say he was the most incredible human being. That's the point. The most incredible human being. And because he had this close connection to God, he understood what God is and understood thereby what a human being is. Afal pi, as he says, even though shebemet ein lahem yachas imo klal, we have no possibility. We have no connection. There's nothing similar. There's no ability to really according to God's greatness, there should not be any ability for us to actually connect to God. But as he said, because of tuvo v'chasto, his goodness and his kindness, he brings himself all the way down and allows that there can be a yachas, a connection that we have with him. And he wanted to have this relationship of a melech, of a king, el am, to a king to his subjects, to his people. Sheichashev lahem l'rosh, that he will be considered like our rosh, our head, our ulamanhig, our leader. Ulihit kiviyachol bam, kamelach shemitkabed va'amo, and he will gain honor through us, through our actions, like a king that is mitkabed, that gets his honor ba'amo, through his nation. And that's what we talk about, that we have to be so careful to make a kiddush Hashem, to do acts that will bring honor and sanctify God's name, and not do things that create the opposite, a chilul Hashem, a lowering, a desecration of the name of God. As the pasuk says, K'inin shenemar, b'rav am hadrat melech, that through the Rav Am, the multitude, the amount of the nation, Hadrat Melech, that's what gives honor to the king. So God chose with his Tov and his Chesed to bring himself down to the point that we have a connection, that he is mityaches eleinu, that he connects to us as a king to his subjects, and he thereby gets honored, or heaven forbid, as happens, dishonored through his association, or through our association with him and his association with us. And based on this, Nikra'ehu, God is referred to as Malko Shel Olam. Baruch atah Hashem Elokeinu Melech Ha'olam, the King of the universe, of the world. V'hinei b'bechina zo hu nechshav lanu l'rosh. And in this role that God chooses to play, he is nechshav lanu, he's considered to us as our rosh, as our leader, umit kabed banu, and he draws honor through us, through his subjects. And we, of course, are obligated to serve him as subjects serve a king. And to listen, to adhere to all that which he commands, yitzaveh, mitzaveh, mitzvah, to all of the commandments, all of the mitzvot, kemelech ba'amo, like a king amongst his nation. Reminds me of a beautiful story. The Bedicheva Rebbe was always looking to find merit on behalf of Klal Yisrael, on behalf of the Jewish people. So I think it's the Bedicheva that it was an Erev Pesach, and there was a certain spice or a certain type of silk which the king did not allow any of the people to have. The government there, was the Russian government, whatever government it was, did not allow any people to have. And he circulated, let's say it was a spice, I don't remember, let's say it was a certain spice, a certain fragrance. And he circulated word amongst his Hasidim that the Rebbe wants some of this spice. They should round up some. And within a few minutes, it was all rounded up. People had in their houses, people had in their basements, people had it. People had it. Once he has that, he then sent his Hasidim around that Pesach is starting within a few hours, and of course the end time for chametz, for anything leavened before Pesach, that already comes about 6 hours or so before Pesach actually begins in the evening. It's already midday, even earlier than that. We hold that we get rid of, we've burnt all of our chametz. So he sent out word that he wanted them to gather some chametz. They said, Rebbe, it's almost Pesach. He goes, I want some chametz. They didn't ask. They went around to all the Jews in the neighborhood. They come back half hour later, empty-handed. Not a single thing to be had. And he looked up towards the heavens. And he said, we're living here, I'll say, in Tsarist Russia, where the Tsar has his secret police, and the Tsar has his prison system. And he makes these rules. And if we break his rules, he has the ability to catch us and to imprison us and to torture our families. And he makes a rule, and everybody tries their best not to get caught. And then we have you, Ribono Shalom, you, Master of the Universe. You don't have police. You don't have informers. You don't have a court system down here to try anybody. And you told us via Moshe thousands of years ago that there should not be any chametz at all, and not a single crumb can be found. That's the true Melech, not these supposed kings that we've either experienced or read about. So that's the Melech Olam, the king of the universe. He gets his honor through us, and we are obligated la'avod avodaso, to serve him, l'shmo elav, and to adhere l'chol asher yitzaveh, to all that which he commands. Kamelech ba'amo, like a king amongst his people, and I'll say even more than a king amongst his people, as that story of the V'ditzhava showed us. V'ulam, b'vechina zo, this aspect, gam kein chayavim anu lahakiro b'chol yom. We've got to recognize this. We've got to announce this. Because when we say something, that's when we start to feel it. We have to recognize him and to proclaim him as such, b'chol yom, on a daily basis. U'lekayem malchuto aleinu, and to establish, to confirm this reign, this kingdom of his, capital H, aleinu, that's upon us. Ulishtabed elav, and to make ourselves subservient to him, uligzerotav, and to his decrees, ka'avadim el malkam, like servants to their king. V'zen nikra, and this is what is referred to as kabbalat o malchut shamayim, the acceptance of the yoke of Malchut Shamayim, of the kingdom of heaven. V'nichlal inyana, and all of this is included, b'pasuk zeh Shema Yisroel. All of this is included in that proclamation that we make twice daily of Shema Yisrael. Hear Israel, or better, accept Israel. Dahainu, which is Hahoda'ah, our admission, our recognition, b'davar zeh, in this matter, shehu melech malchei hamalachim. He is the king who is the king of all kings. Molech, who rules, b'chol briotav, over all that which he created. Ha'elyonim Vatachtonim, that which is up above in the spiritual realm. And this again speaks to the idea we mentioned many times that the forces of Ra, of evil, are there, created or allowed to exist by God because of the important role that they play. There's no clash of God against the Satan in any way. Vikibul ol malchuto. So he is the King of Kings who rules over all his creations, whether in the upper, meaning spiritual realm, or tachtonim, the lower physical realm. The kibul ol malchuto, and it's accepting that yoke, the responsibility of that kingdom. V'hishtabed elav, and submitting ourselves to that authority, to those rules, ukamo shezacharnu, as we have mentioned. Gimel 3, va'amna mikol hanim ha'elu yotzot toladot gedolot. From all of these things, they have this, they come out, toladot gedolot, powerful results, effects. Letikun klal kol habriya, which comes about to rectify, to bring shlema, to bring to betterment, perfection to the entire creation. Vizeh, and this is ki ulam sidrei habriya v'chonuyoteha musudarim baderech. All of the structure of the creation and all of the systems, mesudarim, are arranged in a manner, shekasher malchuto yitbarach shemo nodat, when God's kingdom is known, umodim ba kol bruav, and all of his creations admit to that, they accept that, nimtza vabruim kol tov v'chol shalva, then this world has good, tov, and has shalva, and has tranquility, peace, prosperity. V'abracha mitrabet bahem, and blessing increases. Ushlomam mitgadel, and the peace increases. Ubehitparetz ha'avadim, but when the servants are acting in a way of hitparetz, of bringing their own importance first, and why should I listen to anyone or anything else? When we have that pirtza, that breach, ve'inam mishtabdin, and we no longer humble ourselves, subject ourselves, umodim, and no longer admit the malchuto yitbarach, to God's blessed kingdom, then the opposite is the result. Kol tov chaser, all of that good is then missing, lacking. V'achoshech mitgaber, darkness gets stronger. V'hara'ah sholetet, and evil is what rules. V'hinei nimshachim darchei Hashem ele b'chol chelkei habriya. This pattern extends its way through all the different levels, parts of creation. Elyonim, the upper realms; tachtonim, lower realms; hapoalim, those that act upon; v'anif'alim, and those that are acted upon. As we explained, v'chelik rishon, v'ulam heyod malchuto yitbarach nodat o lo nodat, nimshach vada mimasei tachtonim. This idea of, is God's kingdom known or not, that is in our hands. That takes place down here below by the tachtonim, in the lower realms. In the upper realms, there's no question about that. It's down here where there's room for us to blindly ignore this. These were already explained previously. However, what we need now for that which we are discussing, Shemiyeh tam l'shiyofia habori barach malchuto v'imloch olamo, that when there is reason for God to appear, so to speak, to make himself shown in his kingdom, v'imloch al olamo, and to rule, to be the melech, the king over his world, yimashech mizeh tov harav v'ashal v'agdola lanivraim. Then this brings about, as we said before, the good, the abundance of good, the shalva, the tranquility, for his creations. Tibah, the illumination, the kedusha, the holiness, the tara, the purity, the chol davar tov, the kochot haraya nichpapim, and the forces of evil. So they become bent over, they become humble, they become controlled. Umashubadim, subjugated. V'lo yikalkalu tovat olam, and they're not able to have this adverse effect of bringing kilkul, bringing ruination to the good of the world. V'imlo, but if not, if we don't bring God into this world, then God hides away his face. And does not reveal the strength of his kingdom. And what happens? Then that gets filled by the kochot Ra, the forces of Ra, mitpartzim, they break out, sholtim, they rule, and b'chol tol hanyan hazeh, and all that which results from that. Havot b'chol makom shein sheyachot sham, v'hu klal kol ha'ra'ot hanimtzaot ba'olam. And that will manifest itself wherever this evil can find its way, and that is all of the bad, all of the tragedy, all of the evil that we find in the world. So when Israel are strong in this matter of this Shema Yisroel, of accepting this and making this proclamation, and accepting God's kingdom, and admitting to it, accepting that, bilibam, in our hearts, uvafiyam, and in our mouths, God appears in his world. The kochad arani pim tachanat tov, and the forces of Ra, they start to fold under this tov, and bracha comes to the world. And when we testify about God's oneness, as we mentioned above, then God responds to that. Umitnasei, and he lifts himself up, biyichudo, umachziko, in that unity, in that oneness, and he strengthens that, makes it chazak, umosif lolam tikun al tikun, and he adds onto the world a level of perfection, of improvement upon improvement, right? All going towards that ultimate tikkun, that ultimate Gilui HaYichud we mentioned before, of revelation of God's oneness. She'elav mitgalgalim kol mesibot hanaga, because it is towards that everything is leading, even though some things we can see them leading in that way, and others might appear to us as if they're leading in the opposite direction. It's all leading towards that. Umekayem atzato, fulfilling God's master plan. Shehi, which is Ha'amid Abriya ala Tova Shalem, to establish this world on true, complete Tov, goodness, as we've mentioned. Let's do this last paragraph that we can get to chapter, not to chapter, but to paragraph number 4. What we need to understand is below me'elav. The world, the way God set up this world is that this tikkun comes about through us, through Bnei Adam, through humankind, and not on its own. It's already been arranged, the structure of the world is in such a way, everything must ultimately lead to this perfection. Right? And that God brings that about through his providence, through his good and his powers. But there is a partnership here. And God's gezerah, his divine wisdom, decreed that this comes about through us. Sha'az yishtalmu b'nei Adam. First of all, that brings us tremendous shleimut she'asu hadavar hazeh, that we're the ones who played a role, who brought this about. V'tiyah shlema atzma b'tachlit, right? And this will bring about the greatest degree of shleimus that a human being can attain. B'yot haburim atzmam ba'alei shleimutan k'mo shezacharnu. When we ourselves are the creators of that shleimut, we are the ba'alim, we are the owners, right? We have done that. Nimsa, the result is shezeh ikaram shel dvarim eila. This is the very ikar, the foundation of all this. Shemas shesider Adon Baruch Hu ve'echin liyot mashlim b'yotav, that the God arranged that and prepared the way for this shleimut of the briotav, of his creations. Yushlam v'yetzei lepoel al yidei b'nei Adam. That will come about through b'nei Adam, through us. L'sheyishtalmu hein b'shleimut haroi lahem. When we are able to bring about our own shleimut in the matter that is proper for us. Okay, quite a mouthful, I know, everybody. I'm going to bow out now and go run to Mariv. Okay, so Zlitan Sheva, thanks for sticking around, even though I was gone for a number of weeks. Hopefully by next week we'll have more of the regulars, the other regulars, also with us.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Rabbi.
Laila Tov.
Laila Tov.
I'm going to leave the other Rabbi Ciner on. I can just leave.